Picture this. The dust of Redemption Gulch clings to your clothes. 1,000 miles of hope turned to grit in your throat. You are Ilera, and you have just been rejected. The man you crossed a continent to marry, the esteemed Mayor Thompson, stands before you, his face a mask of contempt. His words, spoken loud enough for the entire town to hear, are like stones thrown at your heart. I sent for a bride, not a beast of burden. He sneers, his gaze sweeping over your full figure with disgust. Look at you. You're too substantial. Too fat. The word hangs in the blistering air, a brand of shame seared onto your soul. He tosses your travel-worn suitcase into the dirt. I have no use for you. Find your own way out of my town. He turns his back on you, the crisp fabric of his suit a stark contrast to the swirling dust of your ruin. You are left standing in the center of the street, a spectacle of humiliation. The townspeople stare, their faces a cruel mosaic of pity, scorn, and morbid curiosity. The setting sun paints the sky in shades of blood and fire, a sky that feels as vast and empty as your future. You are utterly, terrifyingly alone. A deep, primal anger begins to smolder beneath the ice of your shock. You will not give them the satisfaction of your tears. You straighten your spine, lift your chin, and stare sightless at the burning sky, a statue of defiance carved from heartbreak. Just as the shadows of the storefronts threaten to swallow you whole, another shadow falls over you, larger and darker than the rest. It eclipses the cruel sun. A man, a giant of a man, has moved to stand between you and the gawking crowd. He is impossibly tall, with shoulders as broad as an ox yoke and hands that look capable of snapping timber. A jagged scar runs from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, giving his rugged face a permanent, somber cast. This is Silas, the town recluse, a man who dwells in the foothills like a forgotten hermit, speaking only when necessity demands it. Mayor Thompson, hearing the sudden silence, turns back with an irritated sigh. What is it now, Silas? Come to see the show. Silas's eyes, the color of a stormy sky, do not even flicker toward the mayor. They are fixed on Ilera, not with pity, but with a profound and unnerving understanding. His voice, when it comes, is a low rumble, like distant thunder. A storm's coming, he says, his gaze lifting to the darkening horizon where clouds were indeed gathering. He then looks back at Ilera. No person should be left to face it alone. He bends, his large frame moving with a surprising grace, and retrieves her suitcase from the dust, handling it as if it were precious. He extends his other hand to her. It is calloused and scarred, but it is steady. It is a lifeline. Ilera hesitates for only a moment, then places her trembling hand in his. A current of warmth, of safety passes between them. Thompson scoffs, a bitter, dismissive sound. Fine, take the stray, but have her gone by morning. She is a blight on this town. Silas says nothing more. He simply turns, his large hand still holding Ilera's, and leads her away from the suffocating judgment of Redemption Gulch. As they walk towards the rising hills, the first drops of rain begin to fall, washing the dust from the air, each one a small promise of cleansing. The journey to Silas's cabin was made in a silence thick with unspoken thoughts. The storm broke in full force, a wild symphony of wind and rain that mirrored the tempest in Ilera's heart. Yet, with Silas's steady presence beside her, she felt not fear, but a strange sense of sanctuary. His cabin was nestled in a grove of ancient pines, a fortress against the world. It was small, built of rough-hewn logs, but it was solid, clean, and warm. A fire was already crackling in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. It was the home of a man who knew how to survive, who had carved out a life from the unforgiving wilderness with nothing but his own 2 hands. He showed her to a small, partitioned-off room with a simple cot and a clean blanket. "You'll be safe here," he murmured, his back already to her, affording her a privacy she hadn't realized she so desperately craved. In the days that followed, a quiet rhythm began to form between them. Words were scarce, but actions spoke volumes. Ilera, determined not to be a burden, rose with the sun each morning. She found a silent purpose in transforming the bachelor's Spartan cabin into a home. She scrubbed the floors until the wood gleamed, patched the worn elbows of Silas's shirts with neat, careful stitches, and coaxed a small garden of stubborn herbs to life in a patch of soil near the door. Her hands, which the mayor had scorned, were gentle and capable. She learned the language of his solitude, the meaning behind the slight furrow of his brow or the rare, almost imperceptible softening of his eyes. Silas, in turn, watched her. He had lived so long in the ghost-haunted silence of his past that her presence was at first a disruption, then a curiosity, and finally, a balm. He saw the resilience in her, the quiet dignity she carried like a shield. He saw the very sturdiness that Thompson had mocked, and he found it beautiful, like a deep-rooted oak that refuses to bow to the wind. One evening, as she sat by the fire mending a tear in a grain sack, he finally broke the seal on his own pain. He traced the scar on his face with a rough finger. "A fire," he said, his voice raspy, "took everything. My wife, my little girl," the words were clipped, each one a shard of glass. He had built this cabin on the ashes of his old life, a self-imposed exile to punish himself for surviving. He had believed he was meant to be alone, to wither away like a tree struck by lightning. Alara listened, her heart aching with a shared understanding of loss. She told him of her own quiet desperation, of the poverty and loneliness that had driven her to answer a stranger's advertisement, seeking not riches, but simply a place to belong. "I just wanted to plant a garden," she whispered, "and watch it grow." In that moment, a bond was forged, stronger than steel, from the shared embers of their sorrow. The next day, Silas began to work with a new, ferocious energy. He was no longer just maintaining his solitary existence. He was building. He felled trees with powerful swings of his axe, the sound echoing through the valley like a declaration. He hauled stones from the creek bed, his muscles straining. He was building an extension onto the cabin, a new room with a wide window that would face the morning sun. He was building it with his bare hands, pouring his unspoken feelings into the wood and stone. It was a room for her. It was a foundation for a future he hadn't dared to imagine. One afternoon, he found her sitting on the porch, and he pressed a small, intricately carved wooden bird into her palm. Its wings were outstretched, ready for flight. "You are not a stray," he said, his voice low and earnest. "You are the one who has come home." Word of Alara's continued presence in the foothills drifted back to Redemption Gulch like a foul odor. Mayor Thompson, a man whose pride was as vast and as fragile as a desert mirage, was incensed. He had cast her out, publicly branded her as worthless. Her refusal to simply vanish was a personal affront, an act of silent rebellion that gnawed at his authority. When he heard whispers that the hermit Silas was not just harboring her but was building a home for her, his fury curdled into a possessive, venomous rage. It was as if Silas had stolen a piece of property, a flawed item that Thompson had discarded but still considered his own. He would not stand for it. His power was the only thing he truly valued, and he wielded it like a weapon. Poring over dusty town charters in the dead of night, his face illuminated by a single oil lamp, he found what he was looking for: an archaic, ambiguously worded bylaw that could be twisted to his purpose. He declared the land Silas had lived on for years to be unchartered town territory. He branded Silas a squatter and Alara a trespasser. A formal eviction notice was drawn up, a legal document dripping with malice, giving them 1 week to vacate the premises or be removed by force. A rider delivered the notice, pinning it to the cabin door like a death warrant. Silas read it, his face becoming a mask of stone, the muscles in his jaw tight. He had fought the wilderness, fought his own ghosts, but this was a different kind of monster, one that hid behind the shield of the law. He looked at Alara, at the garden she had nurtured, at the warm light spilling from the windows of the home they were building together. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced his stoic heart for the first time in years. It was not a fear for himself, but for her. "We can leave," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "We can go further west." Start again. Elara met his gaze, and in her eyes he saw not fear, but fire. She walked to the half-finished wall of their new room and placed her hand flat against the sturdy logs he had set. "No," she said, her voice unwavering. "My whole life I have been told to move along, to make myself smaller, to disappear. Not this time." She turned back to him, her chin high. "This is our home, Silas. You are building it with your own hands. I am tending it with my own heart. I will not let a small, cruel man take it from us." Her strength flowed into him, extinguishing his fear and stoking the embers of his own defiance into a righteous blaze. He was no longer a man living in the past. He was a man with a future to defend. The day of the deadline arrived with a sky the color of bruised plums. A storm was gathering, the air thick and electric with a tension that mirrored the dread in the valley. Just as the first rumble of thunder echoed off the canyon walls, Mayor Thompson appeared at the edge of the clearing. He was not alone. Flanking him were two hired thugs, men whose faces were hard and empty. Thompson's lips twisted into a triumphant sneer as he saw Elara and Silas standing together on the porch of their cabin. "I see you haven't packed," he called out, his voice laced with false pleasantry. "I warned you, woman. You've brought nothing but trouble." Silas stepped forward, placing himself in front of Elara. He seemed to grow even larger, a mountain of righteous fury. "She has brought nothing but light into a place you left in darkness," Silas boomed, his voice carrying over the rising wind. Thompson laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "It ends now. This is my town, my land." He gestured to his men. "Remove them." But as the thugs took a step forward, another sound joined the wind and thunder. It was the heavy tread of footsteps, the murmur of determined voices. From the path leading back to town, a small group of people emerged. The town blacksmith, his hammer held loosely in one hand. The quiet, mousy storekeeper, his spectacles perched on his nose. And at the front, the preacher's wife, a woman known for her piety and her silence, her face set with a grim resolve. They had all been shamed by their inaction that first day, and inspired by the quiet courage radiating from the cabin in the hills. They had come to make a stand. A found family united against tyranny. The confrontation was immediate and stark. But just as violence was about to erupt, the preacher's wife held up a hand. "There will be no need for that, Mayor," she said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. She held up a sheaf of papers. "I have been reviewing the town records you keep so closely guarded. It seems this land was properly deeded to Silas's father 30 years ago. What you hold is a forgery. The truth, clear and undeniable, struck Thompson like a physical blow. His thugs hesitated, looking from the irrefutable evidence to the unyielding faces of the townsfolk, and took a step back. Thompson's face contorted in a mask of pure hatred, his power dissolving like sugar in the rain. He was exposed, defeated, and utterly alone. The storm finally broke, and a cleansing rain poured down upon the valley, washing away the last vestiges of Mayor Thompson's toxic authority. He was forced to leave Redemption Gulch in disgrace, his name becoming a curse on the lips of the very people he had once ruled through fear. The homestead, the small patch of earth that had become a symbol of defiance and hope, was safe. As the rain softened to a gentle shower and the sun began to pierce through the clouds, Silas turned to Elara. Droplets of water clung to her hair like jewels, and her face was illuminated by a triumphant, peaceful light. He took her hands, his calloused thumbs gently stroking her skin. "Thompson said you were too much," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he had long suppressed. "He was right. You are too much heart, too much strength, too much light for a man as small as him." He looked deep into her eyes, his own stormy gaze now clear as a summer sky. "But for a man like me, who has been empty for so long, you are just enough. You are everything." Tears of pure joy welled in Elara's eyes, mingling with the rain on her cheeks. This was the acceptance she had longed for, a love built not on appearance, but on the unshakable foundation of her true self. She leaned forward and sealed his confession with a kiss, a promise of a new beginning under the watchful eyes of the mountains. There found family, the blacksmith, the storekeeper, and the preacher's wife rallied around them. In the days that followed, they helped finish the cabin, their combined labor a testament to the community they had forged. The home stood complete, a beacon of resilience. Alara and Silas would often stand on their new porch at dusk, watching the sun set over a land that was truly their own. Their hands intertwined, a family born not of blood, but of courage and kindness. What is the true measure of a person's worth? Is it found in the cruel words of the arrogant, or in the quiet strength of a loving heart? We've all felt judged, felt like we weren't enough. We have all been made to feel like we should make ourselves smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. But Alara's story reminds us that our value isn't determined by those who try to diminish us, but by those who see our light and help us build a place to let it shine. It reminds us that sturdiness is a virtue, that resilience is beautiful, and that a home is not just a structure of wood and stone, but a fortress built of love and mutual respect. What would you build for someone you love? What foundations would you lay to protect a heart that has found its way to yours? Let us know in the comments below. And for more stories that inspire the heart and celebrate the strength of the human spirit, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.